Shabbat Shalom, everybody. We're so glad you're with us this Erev Shabbat, and we are happy that we can share this time together. This world is ready for Shabbat. And there's no question that the past few weeks that we've had, we all need a break. We all need a time to renew and a time to be with one another. We want to extend our condolences to Rabbi Barry Lutz and his wife Debbie on the passing of his stepmom, and that's why Barry is not with us here this evening. We send him and his family our most hearty hugs from afar, and we wish him and his family well. May his stepmother's memory be for a blessing. We're going to turn, friends, to our candle lighting, and I have a pair of experts who I live with who are going to join me for lighting the candles. I'll take care of it. Please stand here, please. There we go.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu Asher Hirshanu B'mitzvotah V'tzivanu Le'adikne Shel Shabbat Le'adikne Shel Shabbat.
Thank you, Renata and Eliana, for leading us so beautifully. And we're going to turn, friends, to L'Chadodi, a song that was sung from the hills of Tzfat, overlooking the Galilee and towards the Sea of Galilee. And we can have that inspiration of beauty and nature within our hearts as we continue L'Chadodi. So we have been completely unprepared for what's gone on in the country in the last few weeks. As much as we have seen all in so many different cities all over this country over the past number of years, we weren't physically or emotionally ready for everything that's gone on, from the murder of George Floyd to all the protests around the country, some of which have certainly gotten out of hand and some of which have been as peaceful as can be. The Baruch Hu is actually a call for preparation. It's to prepare ourselves for prayer. Even in our lack of preparation, we prepare for our prayer, and all who are able can please rise in their homes for our formal call to prayer. Baruch Hu. So even during this time, my favorite part is each day I watch the news. And the two stations that I flit with all have a final story after all the torrential amounts of information and news of fire and pandemic and all these horrible things involved with the world of racism and brutality and all that negativity. They end on a moment that brings a sense of peace and oneness. It's a beautiful moment, and we have to remember that even in the midst of all this absolute craziness, God is one. God is not splintered. God is with us here and now. Let's join together, friends, in Ve'ahavta. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי, excuse me, מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם emet. So the prayer we're about to sing is called Hashkivenu. And the line that's so beautiful that you'll see is that we hope to create a sukkah of peace. No matter what goes on in this world, things that are out of our control, we hope that they don't affect us. In the tradition, that was things like famine and wild beasts and brigands. And today we have to think of keeping far away from COVID-19, of preserving our health through this time of pandemania. It's through making careful, even in our own homes and our yards and wherever we may be, that we don't do anything that's going to start a fire. And at the same time, we also want to end the brutality, the racism, the bigotry that we've seen so pervasive in our country over many, many, many years and decades, but especially now as we come to grapple with that at a national level. And so we turn from these horrible moments of illness and from tragedy and from behavior that we wish never existed. We turn to hope for a sukkah of peace over us, over Israel, and over all humanity.
Sorry, folks, I was muted. We're going to try that again.
I'd like to put on the record that even though Cantor was muted, it was not me who muted that button. Unlike other Cantor and Rabbi relationships, ours is very nice. I would never mute my Cantor. It'd be a terrible thing to do. Friends, we're going to turn to our tefillah, and we begin with Adonai Sfatai. God, please open up my individual prayer through my lips, that the words that come from me can declare your praise and honor through my words and my deeds. If you are at home and you're comfortable, please rise.
Adonai Sfatai Tiftach Ufi Agi Tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise.
We're going to continue in our own silent and private personal prayer as part of this community with whom we're praying tonight. You may type your own personal blessing in the chat box should you be moved to do so. Yihul ratzonim refi v'hegyon libi lefanecha, Adonai tzuri v'goali. May the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you, O God, our rock and our redeemer. So, how to approach the Shabbat with all that has gone on these past few weeks? It's always been my custom to turn to the Torah for its wisdom and its guidance. And this week, no surprise, there are some extraordinary words in our portion called Beha'alotecha. And perhaps the key line that has been a challenge for centuries is the line in our Torah that says, Chuka achat yeh lachem v'lager v'la'azrach ha'aretz. You shall have one law for the stranger and for the native born. One rule, one ordinance, one legal system, one set of moral beliefs that are put into practice. Not two, not three, not a separate system for others. Our tradition has called on us for over 2,500 years to have one system of law for everybody, no matter who they are, no matter what their background, no matter what their gender, their race, their ethnic background, their religion, their creed, none of that matters. There is only one law for the land, for the stranger, and for the native born. That has really been put to the test these last few weeks. We know that it's been put to the test before, but especially now, there have been so many dynamic challenges in the last few weeks. And it appears that there are many governments, both city and state, that have taken massive changes in policing and in enforcement and in the way crimes are addressed. We can only hope it bodes well for the future. During this time, we Reform rabbis in Southern California were urged to make a statement. But before I read you part of that statement, I would like to ask Kareth to tell a personal story that relates to this issue and relates to the broader issue of how people who are of color and who are Jewish can be part of this healing ahead. Kareth?
Rabbi Feinstein, thank you so much for sharing this space with me, and it's nice to share space with you again. I want to share a story about a woman who I got to spend, was it only yesterday? It was only yesterday, who I got to spend part of yesterday with, socially distanced, of course. Back when we were able to travel around the world, we had a biennial gathering of Reform congregations from all over North America. Happy to be able to participate in. And there are many speakers invited to these events. One of those speakers was a woman named Mara Gad. And Mara wrote a really wonderful memoir that I highly recommend that you read. It's called The Color of Love. And Mara is a biracial Jew, and that's the word that she uses. And it's about her experience of being a Jewish person with dark skin and how she experienced racism and experiences racism and bias within the Jewish community and even within her own family. It's a very poignant and hard book to read, but a very important book. And if you're looking to put something on your reading list, or even if not, I would say it's a good one to put on there. I am incredibly lucky to have been asked to be the programming chair for the American Conference of Cantors annual conference, annual coming together. We were supposed to be in San Diego in just a few days. And of course, that's not happening. So we've had to pivot to do everything online. Well, right after biennial, we asked Mara to be a part of our experience. And I want to tell you a little bit about what happened to Mara at biennial. So Mara was one of the featured speakers. She was up on the main stage on the Jumbotron, and she shared a little bit about her experience of coming to biennial and why it's difficult for her to show up in Jewish spaces. When she went to register, she took her license out and said, "Hi, I'm Mara Gad. I'm one of the keynote speakers." The person looked at her license, looked at her again. She said, "You're Mara Gad?" And Mara said, "Yes, I'm Mara Gad." Person looked at her license, looked at her again and said, "Are you sure you're Mara Gad?" Experience number one. When we go to biennial, we have badges that designate what we're doing there. Who the keynote speakers are, there's a big designation. It's a different color than everybody else's, And it's so that everyone can know who the speakers are and ask them questions as they're walking around the large space with thousands of Reform Jews gathered together. Mara was in an elevator and wearing her badge that said that she was a part of the conference. And one of the URJ participants, also wearing a badge, turned to her and said, "You know, room service isn't coming to my room." And Mara looked at her and said, "Are you speaking to me?" And she said, "Yes, and I need you to do something about it." And she said, "I'm not sure why you think I work at the hotel. I'm a presenter. I'm taking part in the conference." She had experience after experience like this, and I'm only telling you a couple of them for time. When she related these experiences on the main stage, she offered time for questions and discussion afterwards, and there was someone who took the microphone and who was very angry and said to her, "You could have made all of that go away. All you had to do was say, 'I'm Jewish.'" So it's interesting to note, I think, and very important to note, that after that experience, many people reached out to Mara, shocked, upset, and apologized, but also said, "That would never happen at my synagogue." It's so easy to point to other places, and I think our work is to look inside and think about our own biases, because we all have them. So a first step in that, I think, would be going out, reading her book, and educating yourself about your own biases. I think I'm going to turn it back to Rabbi Feinstein now. Is this the time?
Yep.
Okay.
And so that brings us to our second verse from this week's Torah portion, a verse that we all know from our prayer for healing, and that we will hear in our prayer for healing a little bit later. So we ask for blessing for Mara and any Jew of any racial background. We have Chinese Jews, we have Japanese Jews, we have Vietnamese Jews, we have Jews who come from brown backgrounds and black backgrounds and red backgrounds, and we need to embrace all of them, which is why our Torah teaches us, Elna Rifana La, oh God, heal her now. God, heal all people from the racism and the bigotry and the discrimination that we see out there and that we may be guilty of in our own hearts. And that's why this week, as the Reform rabbis were involved in a statement, I'm proud to say that there were 60 Reform rabbis and cantors who signed this document. 10% of the people who signed this document hanged up their hats or their kippot at University Synagogue. It was signed by Rabbi Lutz, by Rabbi Simons, by Rabbi Freeling, by Cantor Freilich, by Cantor Shapiro, and by me. So let me share this document that speaks to the times, because it is so urgent and so important for us. The Eternal said to Cain, "Where is your brother, Abel?" And he said, "I do not know him. Am I my brother's keeper?" And God said, "What have you done? Your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground." Not all lives are valued equally. As George Floyd lay on the ground, a police officer's knee crushing his neck, cutting off his oxygen, we know how painful that must have been. And we are the country that is crushing his neck, cutting off his oxygen, rooted in an institutional racism that from our inception as a country counted slaves as 3/5 of a human being, only 60%. Today, we, a coalition of 60 Reform rabbis and cantors, proclaim in a unified voice, we are responsible. We are responsible for the lives of our brothers and sisters, of our neighbors, and of each other. We hear the voice of God in our tradition thundering, your brother's blood cries out to me from the grave, from the ground. The voice of the eternal, which is lodged deep within each of us, which recognizes the common humanity in us all, compels us to hear the call of action. The murder of George Floyd, of Ahmaud Arbery, of Breonna Taylor, these are not isolated events. Rather, they represent generations of victims of systemic racism, lynchings, state-sanctioned violence against Black people and people of color. And we say with one voice, enough. In Los Angeles, the next steps are clear. We stand in solidarity, side by side with all those in our city who exercise their First Amendment rights and demand change. We are one with all those who march in nonviolent protests, who bear witness to the pain and violence committed against Black people and all people of color. We also denounce acts of violence on our streets, whether from police protesters or third parties, and echo the calls of so many faith and civic leaders for peace. Secondly, we applaud Mayor Garcetti and City Council Representative Herb Wesson for proposals to shift $120 to $150 million from the LAPD operating budget to benefit communities of color. The police department's budget makes up 54% of the city's general budget, so a transfer of 6 to 8% of the police department's budget to social services and humanitarian needs is only a first step. We hope that the members of the City Council will shift more city funds from policing to invest in communities, families, and youth, especially in communities of color. And finally, we'll call upon our national leaders to govern with courage and compassion, to fulfill their most basic role in our country, to represent all of us, to act in the best interest of all of us, to see it as their fundamental duty to care for all of us. Our neighbor's blood cries out to us from the ground, and we weep over all the terror that has been inflicted. We rage at the injustice in our midst. We pray for shalom. We act for change. We invite you to join us. And that brings us to the final verse that comes for tonight's lesson. And that is a fascinating beginning to the Torah portion that invites us to light the lights in the menorah. No, it's not Hanukkah. Hanukkah is maybe 300 to 500 years after the end of the Torah was actually finished. But it comes to us to light the lampstand, the menorah that would have stood in the ancient temple, and is in fact something that we know historically because it's featured in the Arch of Titus in Rome, way up high in the sculpture. You can see what the original menorah must have looked like. And the verse teaches us, "Daber el Aharon v'amarta elav, v'halatecha et hanerot el mul penei hamenorah, ya'iru shivat hanerot." Speak to Aaron, say to him, when you light the lamps, the 7 lamps shall give light in front of the lampstand. We don't have that menorah anymore. We don't have, many of us, other than a Chanukiah, we don't have any other menorah that's in our home. But each of us can be a light. Each of us, through our words, our deeds, our tzedakah, our presence, can be the light that we need now. And when we light those lights in our hearts and with our hands, we truly can affect the change to make one law, one legal system, one ordinance, one rule, one set of behaviors based in morality and ethics for every single person, the stranger and the native born alike, Chukah Achat, only one system, only one way to govern, with justice and with peace. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may this be God's will. Amen. We hold all the names of those in need of healing in our hearts. If there is someone who would like to mention a name now, please feel comfortable in doing so. Or you may type it in the chat box. We can hold all those names together as a congregational family. Let's turn to our tradition, friends. Our prayer for our country is so needed at this time. Amazing to me, and never a surprise, that our tradition, thousands of years ago, had the words written by the prophets that speak to us now. Ancient words, 2,500 years ago, 2,800 years ago. And yet they speak to this moment when our nation is crying out. So wherever you may be, would you join me, please, as we read important words from the prophet Isaiah. Thus says Adonai, this is what I desire, to unlock the fetters of wickedness and untie the cords of lawlessness, to let the oppressed go free, to break off every yoke. Share your bread with the hungry. Take the wretched poor into your home. When you see the naked, give clothing. Do not ignore your own kin. If you banish the yoke from your midst, the menacing hand, the evil speech, if you offer compassion to the hungry and satisfy the famished creature, then your light shall shine in darkness. So may it be. Going to invite you to rise for Aleinu as we turn to the closing sections of our service.
Aleinu leshabeach ladon hakol. Aleinu, it is on us to bow in praise before God as a sign of reverence and perhaps submission. It is on us to bend our knees only in reverence for life and only for submission to that which is good. Aleinu, it is on us. Our sages teach that the angels have no knees. Their legs do not bend. They do not need knees because their entire purpose is to stand tall before God in service. But we are not these kinds of angels. We bend under the weight on our shoulders. We let this twisted world twist us into knowing that our service to God comes not only in the form of thoughts and prayers, but in the form of action. Aleinu, it is on us. Va'anachnu koreim, we bend at the knee. Umishtachavim, we bow at the waist. Lifnei melech malchei hamlachim, we stand straight before God. Hakadosh Baruch, we who are made in God's image must be holy. God is holy. So we rise to repair this very broken world. We stand straight because we can. We stand up because we must. Aleinu, it is on us. We bend our knees before the God of love, in devotion and disruption, in protest and in praise, from shame to shlemut, wholeness. We rise before the God of truth to march and to move, to bend this broken arc toward justice. Aleinu, it is on us. Bent knees are for showing reverence, to prostrate in peaceful protest, to prepare us for moving, to prepare us for marching. Bent knees are not for killing. God did not make knees or any other part of us for that. Aleinu, it is on us.
We turn our thoughts, friends, to those we have lost in recent days. Connie Pascal Gray, the great aunt of Ann Richards, Susan Rosenstein, Marvin Levin, husband of Ruth Levin, father of Greg and Helen, Randy and Monique, grandpa of Nathaniel and Serena, to Kathy Lutz, mother to Rabbi Barry and Debbie, Sherry and Marshall, grandmother to Rabbi Adam Lutz and Cantor Emma Lutz, Jeremy Lutz and Emily Lutz, and Gabby Silak, Aaron Bloom, Isaac Bloom, Heath Astor and Rachel Burns, Lauren and Josh Blumenthal, and great-grandma to little Ruby Mira Lutz. We remember Eva Schenk, the grandma of Jessica Kronstadt, and William Turner, great-grandma to Carolyn and Catherine. Donald Waldman, the father of Julie Berry Ephraim, grandpa to Davina, Noah, and Ariella. Harold Weisfeld, father of Lindy Weisfeld Kaufman, grandpa to Chloe and Haley. And Aunt Werwand, the mother of Raymond Werwand and Jane, grandma to Molly and Lucy. And we also recall these loved ones who died at this particular season in years past. Roberta Bjarnason, Irving Kohler, Milton Eller, Eileen Fine, Jean Feinstein, Lynn Fields, Harriet Freilich, Merton Sills Freeman, Dorothy Goldberg, Michelle Goldman Kane, Esther Goldman Bereskin, Isidore Kornhauser, Shirley Chrisman, Philip Levine, Susan Martin, Hadley Miller, Leah Myers, Max Newman, Jerome Newman, Henry Nieberg, Rose Osgood, Ernst Roseman, Genya Spiro, Maury Taylor, Elaine Wexler, Seymour Wegg, Margit Weisberg, and Sam Zelkowitz. We invite you to offer any names that you would like to remember. Again, you may type them in the chat room or offer them where you are as we recall those named and always those who remain in our hearts. Let us turn to our Kaddish and invite all who are able to please rise. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, be'alma divrach yerutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon, v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru, amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevorach le'olam ule'olmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, V'tadar v'talei v'talal, shemei dekudesha b'richu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, ta'amiran ba'alma v'imru, amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, v'yaseh shalom aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael, Al kol b'nei adam b'imru, amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn, comfort all who are saddened among us, here and wherever they may be. May God, who makes peace in the high places, send peace to us through the work of our hands and our hearts, upon us and all Israel and all humanity, and let us say together, amen. Before we conclude, we have a lot of hands who help make this service. I want to thank especially Ashley Young, who I hope one day you can all meet. She's our new wonderful assistant to the clergy, hiding behind the scenes, you saw on Memorex, and that was Susan Rosenstein, who was also helping with some of the tech this evening, to our wonderful cantor, Kareth Spencer Shapiro. I appreciate so much her sharing the story of Mara Gad, and hope that you can find her book and read it. G-A-D is the last name. Mara is M-A-R-R-A, Mara Gad. And we're going to also thank our two candlelighters. And I have to say, proud as I am, they did the tallies. They had weekend events for Unity and Junior Unity. They had over 20 kids involved. They've had 3 events a week since the lockdown. And they tallied up how many kids have been involved, whether one event or everything during the year. And our kids led 56 kids to be connected to our youth group and to our synagogue. So I want to compliment them publicly, not just because they're my daughters, but because they're the president, vice president of University Synagogue Temple Youth Unity. And it's our time to focus over to Josh and Lisa and Jaron Paris, who are going to lead us in our Kiddush. So nice to see all of you there, Paris family. And
Hi.
Hi.
we have
Shalom.
Shabbat shalom and happy birthday,
Josh.
Josh.
And you're on.
Ready? Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu b'shabbat kodsho, b'ahava uvratzon hinchalanu, zikaron l'maseh bereshit. Kihu yom techila, l'mikra ein kodesh, zecher l'siyar mitzrayim, kivanu v'charta ve'otanu kidashta, nikol hamim, b'shabbat kodshecha, b'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu, Baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh hashabbat.
Yash koach, well done. L'chaim.
L'chaim.
So our closing song is Oseh Shalom. Before we sing, again, I want to thank Kareth. And again, we want to send our special condolences to Rabbi Barry and Debbie Lutz and their whole family. And may God find room to offer them peace and shalom in this time ahead. Nachamu, Nachamu.
I think the Parises, are you prepared to lead us in Motzi as well?
Of course.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Oh, yay.
We on?
You're on.
Good. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Rabbi, I apologize. I don't think you saw the last version of our order of service. I wasn't sure if I was going to have this ready for us. Our closing song actually tonight is a table song for our Shabbat table, Shalom Aleichem. We mentioned angels in this song. And so you'll see some angels, not the ones they talk about in the song necessarily, but you'll see some angels and some beautiful faces that you might recognize. As you hear this melody, please sing along. I thought being distanced from one another, it would be so nice for us to be able to see one another at happier times when we could join together.
Amen. Shalom Aleichem.
Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem.
Let's go out and light those lights in the community so that we can truly make of our lives and make of our land a place with one law for all. Shabbat Shalom. Have a wonderful Shabbat and a healthy, safe week ahead.
Shabbat Shalom. We're going to.
So nice to see you on my side.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, tired teacher.
Shabbat Shalom, Jenny.
I'm still enjoying it.
Welcome to the club.
Oh, there's everybody big.
Yeah.
Big.